Night Terrors Superman issue 1, Joshua Williamson writing and Tom Riley on the art. And I would like to start off by saying there's a moment early in this issue where it starts off with like the moment Superman fell asleep and he falls out the sky and his nightmare's starting and he's falling through the water, and they do like an Inception style thing where because he's falling through water, there's like a tidal wave in his dream, and I thought, oh, okay, you know what? If they play with this, I could have some fun. That's an
interesting.
Yeah, that's a fun little concept. Yeah. And then I lost interest by the time there's like a villainous figure who's meant to be like all of his fears and formed into a persona, blah blah blah.
But then skeletal angel, yeah.
But then a couple of pages later, and I flash back to 2 weeks ago when we were talking about Night Terror's Batman, and we were complaining about the perils, and we sat here and we said, we better not see Krypton exploding in Superman Night Terrors. And would you believe it? Krypton exploded! Which, honestly, the broad problem with these tie-ins, not all of them, but a lot of them, right? And I'm including Batman, Superman, I'm including Green Lantern because it had the Abin Sur crash landing. I'll include Nightwing, kind of. Didn't have the event, but it had the dead parents. Is that it's like they keep just like all these nightmares, they're all just tying into like the base origin things that these characters
it's the lowest
always
common denominator.
Yes,
they're not trying to do actual nightmare logic stuff, which is why I look at something like Ravager and I feel that there's the nightmare logic at play there. It's not and granted, Ravager's not one of these top tier characters where everybody knows her origin or who she is, but that allows that writer to do something a little bit different. And but I also feel like the quality of writers that are working on these Night Terror books just take swings at things, right? Like, I don't need to see Abin Sur, you know.
It's just mostly meaningless, and that's why I like the Shazam one quite a bit, is because
that did play with Dream Logic.
That's another one.
It played with Dream Logic, but it also, I think, benefited from focusing on a character who's not the main character in the ongoing run. I mean, she's in the ongoing run, but she's not the main character. Right. So it was like, okay, we're going to view it from a different perspective, and it has more to offer versus a lot of these other tie-ins where it's just, okay, there might be an interesting thing early on in the issue, but by the time we get to the end, it's the same thing. They're facing their worst fears, and their worst fears all relate to their origin.
It's so annoying because there's one page in this book that I really love. It's fairly early on, like the first third or so. It's before the skeletal dude shows up.
Yeah.
And it's the page where Superman gets thrown through the panels. And it's like a full page with these 4 panels as vertical slices, and he's thrown through them, and each panel's like it's flashing through a different nightmare.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a phenomenal page. It's so creative.
It's all, it's all different ways that Metropolis is being destroyed. It's like a wasteland.
And then it does nothing with that. Just like these cool ideas.
Actually, I'm going to give one compliment to the editorial of this event. Slightly, there is one thing that I will slightly praise, is that this week in 2 different books in these tie-ins, there's examples of like 2 characters meeting up in the nightmare world, showing that they're all connected, right? That they're and so in this issue, Supergirl punches through the dream wall into Superman's nightmare.
I will give Williamson credit for having the super family, be able to punch through realities.
Sure.
And then they get tapped by all the different versions of Supergirl from continuity's history.
What I'm praising there, though, is that from a pacing point of view of the event going over 8 weeks, it is actually well plotted in the sense that you have this happening not until week 3, but it happens in a couple of them. So it feels like some of them are syncing up quite well in that sense. And also, if you're only reading some of them, there's a good chance you at least read one of the ones where 2 characters meet up from.
Well, and this feels, because
nightmares.
It's Williamson, it feels like there's more, not at stake, but what's the word?
But
it's more important. So.
Let me make it clear, though. That is the extent of my positivity on this.
I will say I like the art here.
I like the art a lot.
Oh yeah, the art's good, but that's like a separate thing.
Okay, but writing wise, there are some things I did like. The whole idea of like it's that this feels like it should be more fear based and not just nightmare, right? Because a nightmare is just it's a bad dream, not necessarily things that you're afraid about, right?
And that's what makes it more frustrating with like the Batman issue. It doesn't. it doesn't reference like his history with Scarecrow,
right?
And like how he should be dealing with this.
But I will say, like, I do like the idea of Williamson bringing up that Superman's the man of tomorrow because he's going to outlive everybody he cares about, right? And what that would mean, and that is to me one of Clark's nightmares. Like that goes in there with him not being able to save Pa Kent because it was a heart attack. You know, it's something that's completely out of his hands. No matter how much he tries, you know, he's going to outlast people he cares about. And I think Williamson did do a pretty decent job of getting that point across. Now, what led to all of that? Like, why did we need the big demonic angel skeletal thing to represent this, right? Why couldn't it just be Superman having a monologue with himself alone and how he, you know, for someone that's the last son of Krypton, he really isn't. You know, he is surrounded by people he cares about. So, but yeah, these are starting to feel way too tedious, to borrow a term from Pete.
Well, yeah, one of the things that's a problem with it is that a lot of them are hitting the same beats and they're using the same formula. So it's like random things. Something from their origin here. And so even if like something is making an okay point, like, okay, Superman naturally has a fear that he's going to outlive everyone that he cares about and be alone. Okay, that's perfectly makes sense. But the problem is that when you're doing this for every character, even if they're all making at least one good point, it still feels really repetitive because I'm like, well, okay, you know, like, I'm still, I mean, it's only been 2 issues, but I'm still enjoying the main story part so far. Again, it's Joshua Williamson. He's probably going to drop the ball later because he usually does. But so far, I'm enjoying the main story. But
it doesn't feel like there's a formula like these other ones do.
And it's not set in the nightmares though. It's right. Dead Man's been a proactive main character. He's pulled off an interesting thing in the last issue to try and solve it. You know, by resurrecting Sandman. Cool, fun, right? You know, let's play with that. But the tie-ins are just there's not been a single one, even though I call it the Mary Marvel one, but there's not been a single one that has made me go, I'm glad that I got this instead of the next issue of Shazam or the next issue.
That's how I felt about Green Lantern, right? Because I got behind on Green Lantern, so I read issue 2 and then immediately went to issue 3, and you know, issue 2 ends as it's going, and I like Jeremy Adams. So I went in with like, okay, he might pull this off, and then that was just
awful.
I didn't want to read comics again for a minute. It was just that. Not that it was that bad. It was just like
it's meaningless.
What's on TV? Like, what can I do to occupy my time right now?
It's, you know, when people say that comics are a meaningless art form, and especially in the direct market, that the singles are overpriced. And I look at that Green Lantern issue and you go, maybe they got a point.
Yeah, because there was nothing interesting in there for it. So like,
and you know, it has like a big cliffhanger, and the cliffhanger means nothing because it's in a nightmare. It doesn't matter. Right. They can literally just like wave this away in the first page next issue, and
they go, literally all they have to do is, and then they woke up.
Yeah,
and none of it matters.
Yeah. And, well, that's why I like the stuff that they do with Superman here with Kara. You know, her coming through. Now he's not alone. You know, he's got someone else to go through this with. You know, so at least that's a little bit different than some of the other stuff.
Yeah, but it's like the last 3 pages. You know, it's so much of it's still the same formula. I guess the one interesting reveal at the end of this is that Aquaman and the other Atlanteans are still awake. So, you know.
More interesting, Williamson doesn't have a vibe for how to write Arthur. I'll say that much either. Having him talk like a pirate, ain't it, man? But at least that's fun. At least that's a little quirky type thing. But yeah, they weren't affected. Another thing that bothered me, and this is just my continuity brain, is Superman didn't meet Insomnia, yet he knew when Insomnia pops up. Like, that must be him. Right?
Dream logic.
I get the dream logic stuff, but however, you know, him just knowing, like, oh, you must be Insomnia. Like, where'd he get that from?
I think that's just like they assume because we're reading at least the main book plus this,
right,
that we know, so they're not going to waste time like trying to like have him realize it.
Sure, but I just like it was one of those things that stood out. He could have just been like, "Oh, you're the one responsible," but him actually calling him his name, like that's something I feel like Batman and Deadman and all of them would know because Superman fell before any of that stuff.
And for the record, like I agree the art is pretty good. Like the art is it's got this great look to it, especially in the Daily Planet stuff. It kind of has this the flat colors. It's this old sort of Silver Age look to it, and then it gets more like Krypton exploding looks good. Like I'm not going to say it doesn't, but
I just don't want to. I don't want to see the rocket ship anymore.
The Pearls look good too in Batman.
Well,
God. Oh, God. I was explaining that issue to my wife, and she thought the pearls were hilarious. So at least, again, to a normie with zero context, it's it's
still ridiculous.
Hey, Batman was more enjoyable to read than this because Batman was funny, right? It wasn't good, but it was funny.
So you're calling Batman Night Terror's Batman the Birdemic of comics?
Yeah, it's kind of in that ballpark. Yeah, it's
Okay, it's not as bad as Birdemic. I didn't have anything else to pull from, though.
I would rather watch the Birdemic of an event than the 5 out of 10 middling thing that the rest of it is.
Transformers Rise of the Beasts.
That's closer.
Yeah. But yeah, so... how you praise for the art here, and I don't think I've seen this artist before, so that's why it felt familiar, though. But probably just because it feels a little bit like Darwin Cook. And I think that's,
It is Darwin Cook-esque, yeah. I don't know if I've seen them on anything. I'll have to see what they've worked on.
But it felt familiar, and I think that helps also with the Dream Logic type stuff, too.
Yes, Matt, on you go, right away.
I'll give this a 6 out of 10.
Connor?
Bafflingly high. I'm going to 4.
I think I'll split the difference, I guess, and go 5. It gets that high because of the art. For the most part, but I can't say I'm not mad at your 4 either. Like I'm not feeling that passionate about it. This is the worst feeling to feel at the end of a comic. Is like I don't even hate it. I just